Hello, hello, hello.
I'm still getting used to that. I know we're here, we're getting the season off rolling, but I'm still getting used to that. That is quite the
I
intro, and
love that intro.
yeah,
You should see us rocking
that
behind the
that's
scenes.
quite the intro. So awesome stuff.
Yes, yes. Hey, it's 2024, the year
Yes.
of more love, kindness, forgiveness, all the good things, more good things, right? And on this earth, because we certainly need it. Welcome to the new year and welcome to working it out across generations. This is episode 5, how to forgive when you just don't want to. And if it's your first time tuning in, or even if you tuned in before, we talk about all things conflict. So it could be conflict in their family, at your workplace, in your community, hey, conflict within yourself. We talk about all those things. So we are so glad that you've joined us, whether you're joining us live, we hope so. And if not, joining for the replay, we are thankful.
Yeah, we thought today's topic was a very important one, especially for after 2023 walking into the new year. We thought that a lot has happened for everyone, definitely since 2020. But if we're talking 2023, that was definitely a year of ups and downs for the entire world. And so the reality is people are walking into this new year holding on to things that might stunt their growth, that might stunt their progress, stepping into this new year. And we want to be able to just give some tips and also just open up that space for stepping into this new year with a clear mind, full heart, and you know, real expectations of yourself that can be accomplished. So good
Yeah.
stuff.
And it's not an easy one. I'm going to tell you that I write a blog. So, LynneMaureenHurdle.com. You can get my blog plus some free stuff in terms of conflict resolution tips if you sign on. But this blog or these blogs around forgiveness are the ones where people really write back to me. This is my thing. This is so hard for me. This is really difficult. I don't think that I can do it. And it ties in with some other things, right? A lot of people holding grudges out there, which is about unforgiveness, right? And loving the grudges. They just want to hold on because they feel like they can't let go, or they don't want to let go, or something will be deficit in their life if they let go. They'll look weak, whatever it is. Apologies. That's the other one that's big, that ties into not being able to forgive. The fact that either you might be waiting for an apology from someone, or you really should be giving someone an apology and you just not going to do it, or you just really just hate it, or it's just you don't know how, or it's just so difficult. A lot of us really didn't have models for apologizing either. And that's the thing. And I'll talk about a little bit in my life, right, in a few, about that particular tie-in to being able to forgive or holding unforgiveness in your heart. But I feel like this is so important. I know for me, I've done work on this. I won't say I'm at the end of it. I think we should never be at the end of learning and getting better, right?
Absolutely.
But there are things that we can say, well, I no longer need to really work on that. This, I know that I do still need to work on it, but I'm surprised at the level of intensity in which it comes up. That shows me, hey, you thought you forgave that person, or you thought you forgave yourself about this thing. You have not, because when it comes up, the feelings that hit me are so strong. It's almost as if it just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's ever happened to you all out there, but I know for me, it is almost as if it just happened. And then I know, oh my goodness, you are still holding unforgiveness on this subject, and you have got to figure out how to let go. So I sympathize. If you've done work on it and it's still happening for you, coming up for you, or if you haven't, I recognize how difficult it is to forgive, especially when we don't have a lot of models for that. We see a lot of, you look at things that are happening in the news, and you look at celebrities, and the biggest thing is beefs with people. You look at the entertainment world, and people are just holding things, and you don't see a lot of the forgiveness piece, and that for me is part of the problem with why we are having such trouble forgiving people, and particularly ourselves. So I don't know what you feel about this,
Absolutely.
Justin.
I love what you're saying. And I think I really agree and resonate with the lack of models thereof out there for people who are looking at these people, or looking just simply at their phones all the time, right? We've all got a
Oh,
phone, so
wow.
it's not even the people we're necessarily worshiping or looking after or anything of that nature. It's the attachment to just wanting to be connected, right? And so I think that in the times that I have seen some people who personally I do admire in these, higher situations of life, when they've come together to have those conversations, to not only put things out there in the open for, closure of gaps, for things of that nature, but there's also like a plan moving forward for how they want to coexist, and how they want to speak of each other, and how they want to speak around each other. I think one of the best examples for me was, this was before Kobe Bryant passed away, but him and Shaquille O'Neal
Mm-hmm.
actually got together and had a conversation
Mm.
on camera. It was a documented thing on ESPN, and they had some, a lot of ups and downs in their, career, professional relationship, their person that seeped into their personal, because they were two athletes who were in the limelight and on the same team, and so naturally a lot came up, and because of their stature, it was public, and so there was a lot that we didn't know that they put out on the table,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot that they had both apologized for and recognized within themselves, whether it was something out of character or something that in their life at that time in which the emotions took over. I think models like that we need more of, especially when you consider the totality of that experience, having that we lost Kobe Bryant, right? It's definitely one of those things where you don't want to wait till it's too late.
Right.
That's really a big thing for me.
Yeah, I bet Shaq is glad that he
Oh,
did that.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely,
because
very emotional, but
yeah,
absolutely,
no way to see that coming. So to
yeah.
be on that side of things when Kobe passed, that's got to be a better feeling than having held it for so long. And that's the other thing too about this topic. People are holding unforgiveness for people who are no longer on this earth. And believe me, I get it that there are some things that just seem so unforgivable that you feel I'm right, they were wrong, and there's no way I'm going to forgive. But I tell you, when we talk about some of the benefits, right, of forgiving, I think you'll understand a little better why you really want to really try to do something about the unforgiveness that you're holding. And I'll include, we need to do something about the unforgiveness that we're holding. And I brought up the thing about models, right? Because I know, right? I mean, just culturally, I'm going to say, growing up in African American community, I will say you do not hear conversations around forgiveness. In fact, you hear the opposite, right? I'm never going to forgive you for that, right? That's unforgivable. All the language that indicates that there is no room for forgiveness. And maybe in the church, not maybe in the church, you'll hear it, but there's never real instruction on how to actually forgive. And we talk about in the church, talking about God forgiving us, right? And there's so many things that God has to forgive us for, but there's not a lot of talk about forgiveness. And I can tell for other people, right? For the human beings who are sitting right next to us, or who come to Thanksgiving dinner, I'm sorry, to holiday dinners, right? But it is so important for us to be the models right now, because growing up, I know I did not have those models. And as I said, in the African American community, I didn't see parents talking about forgiveness or forgiving their children or even talking about forgiving themselves. That's just something that didn't happen. So I'm trying to recall someone actually even having that conversation with me when I was growing up. What I recall, the closest thing I recall to anything having to do with this is I was probably about 5 or 6, and I was sitting at the dining room table. My sister and my mom, I guess, had poured me a glass of milk or whatever, and for some way I spilled it. And that's me, that was me. I'm the one that's going to spill. But in any case, she immediately slapped me in the face. And I was horrified, and I didn't know what to do or say. And I didn't think that what I did was so terrible that it deserved that. And she right away, though, she said, oh, I'm sorry. I promised myself I would never do that. And I know that my mom grew up with a mom who hit her with all kinds of things. That was the norm in her coming up. And that was the only time, though, in my life that my mom ever apologized to me. So at the time, I can vaguely remember feeling like, oh, at least she's sorry, even in my confusion, right? However, as I continued to grow up and go on, I didn't see anything that really went along with that around forgiveness. It would have been great. It would have been great, even at 5 or 6, for her to start that conversation, right, about forgiveness and how important that is, or even to ask me, do you forgive me? Like, that never was a question either. Like, I'm sorry, and she said her explanation, and actually we moved on to just kind of going on to dinner. Nothing else was said by anybody else in the family. So I didn't have the models. I did not have the models. I can remember sometimes being told to forgive somebody else, right? But never really a conversation about forgiveness and the importance of it and how you do it, and so I grew up not really knowing, and had to take in my adult life the time to learn. When I got into conflict resolutions, I had to take the time to learn how to take steps to start to forgive. And that's why we're here today. But I don't know if you have any secrets to spill, whether or not I.
Well, I have a question first.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, do you feel like, especially with, well, you received an apology for that, so that's great. But with the, maybe just dismissal after, of just kind of going about dinner and things of that nature, like, did you feel like that apology was sincere? And then do you feel like you really forgave that, or could forgive that?
Yeah.
And that ties into how it shows up for me.
Yeah.
But that's my question to start, because that's milk being spilled. So I'm just thinking that's like something so minimal as to why anyone would deserve to like get hit by anyone. But I mean, that's your parent, that's your mom. So it's like, what was that like?
I know I was very stunned.
Yeah.
I do know that. And I grew up with a lot of yelling in my household, my mom yelling at us. So it is interesting, as bad as that was to be slapped, especially for that reason. It's just so much worse, in my view, to be yelled at all the time about everything, but I don't know. It's a vague memory for me in terms of what I was thinking, except that I was shocked. And I think that I thought perhaps she meant it, because at that time I was young. I hadn't had the full experience of her yelling, right? I hadn't, that throughout my life, even as an adult. So I hadn't that full experience to compare it to. So at 5 or 6, I'm pretty sure I just was like, okay, she didn't mean it, right? Or she's sorry. She's really sorry. But I would have loved a conversation. It would have been good. but we didn't have real like conversations like that in our house growing up. So
That's interesting.
yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think for me with forgiveness, my relationship with forgiveness, I think started off very tainted. Started off on the wrong foot. I believe, especially with having been bullied and things of that nature. I kind of associated letting it happen with forgiveness in some sort of weird twisted way, and then I feel like the amplifying of that message of just like walk away or go talk to someone, right? And then if it did become a conversation, or if it was something that they tried to mediate, which never went well, and this is coming from a mediator, right? A peer mediator himself, I'm telling you, there's a lot of these educators who don't know how to mediate these situations. However, it felt like the conversation or apology or whatever was fake, or just kind of like, someone's watching, someone of authority's watching. So it's not like they've got to really, correct their behavior when we're outside of that room. They just got to sell themselves long enough in the room to make sure they get out scot-free. And this is me, a young black man in a young black kid in, private white institutions, right? At the end of the day, we all know in these types of environments, right, when you're a person of color, you can't act like all the other kids all the time, right? If a kid that doesn't look like me is the joker, the class clown, he's looked at as just that, right? If it's me doing the same kind of thing, it's looked at as disruptive, anything of that nature, right? So I think it started off tainted because it just felt like I was letting a lot of stuff be said to me, however people wanted to say it, or things of that nature, or I just had to walk away for my own protection of my peace of mind. But coming home, having the foundation that I had at home, right, where we had family talks, like we sat at the table together, and we break bread, not just because that's what families do, but because we actually enjoy doing that with each other. If we had any dispute here and anything going on here, I think my parents did a great job of, just showing me that they're human too, in like, okay, well, I might have responded wrong in this moment. Right. I can recognize that and I apologize. And here's what I'm going to do moving forward to try to, prevent this from coming up again. Or if it does, it's not going to be as, deep, bringing up of so many emotions and things of that nature. And I think my parents did a great job with a lot of things around that. So it was, again, just another thing. You'll hear me say this often on this show, of just kind of like, the things that I was taught at home I felt very healthy and very much the way of, like, maybe, forgive, don't forget kind of thing, whatever. But, when I was outside and around, my own age range and things of that nature, and just not at home when I'm, in the world, and it's my choices, it's up to me. I feel like those influences definitely can take over. And the more that you don't acknowledge, how this stuff is identifying for you, the more damage that could be done. And I've seen it happen, and, it's happened to me at times. So I definitely have tried to, since then, I believe since my dad passed, I'm not trying to get dark or anything, but there's a lot of rebirth in grief. And I think that for me, it just made me look back. It made me look back with a different perspective. And I feel like now, forgiveness, whether it's, really forgiveness in that moment or not, right? Definitely the protection of my peace of mind, right? The protection of my energy, the conserving of that, and the process of that. Forgiveness is something that I think, especially even within myself, that I'm not too afraid of now.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't think we say like, oh, please forgive me. I don't know. I know I've said it. I think one of the things that why we do this show is that we talk so much. We really get things out there. We don't wait till it bubbles up. I mean, there have been times that has happened. Those are probably the times where it's like, please forgive me, and you forgive me, or I forgive you. But really, being able to have the conversations ongoing keeps from having to be in that place of, I have to forgive you, right? It's not that people can't do something one time that's really bad, and you ask for forgiveness, or you forgive them for it. But often it's just the ongoing effects, right? It's doing things over and over and over again that tend to lead to having to forgive someone. But really, truly, number one, if you're watching live, please comment for yourself on whether or not this is difficult for you. I have not met anybody who's told me it's easy, but if you please comment and tell us what your situation is, and we're gonna be here right now to tell you why we even do this, right? Why you should even forgive, because some people are happy with their grudges, with their unforgiveness, but we're going to tell you some of the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that, because you can move in anywhere and become comfortable, right? The reality is, so there are plenty of unhealthy things that we live in, and things of that nature. And I think this is one of those things that a lot of people need to break out of their own comfort zone to do. And so one of the possible things that can come about from forgiving, especially in the times that you don't want to, is possible health benefits, literal stress being reduced in your life. I know for me personally, especially in those times where I don't want to, where I feel like I've really done some work to get to that place where I can release that weight off of me and off of my mind. Really, I don't know how other people do. You could let us know, but a lot of this stuff can keep me up at night, or things of that nature, right? And so it'll improve your sleep. It will, definitely keep you motivated. It'll definitely help you say all the things positively in your mind that you need to say to yourself. And it'll make it easier to actually go through with it. The mind, the body, and the soul are all connected. So especially, I feel, if you start from the soul and you work from there, it's only beneficial from there. And this is honestly heart work. This is soul work to do this. This is not lifting a weight, anything of that nature. This is emotional weight, emotional work, soul work that really needs to be done in order to be able to do this. So definitely a lot of health benefits that come in the end. I think the next thing, which is huge, and this is for me personally that I really resonate with, which is self-forgiveness. I have a lot of things personally in my life that, yes, like, have happened to me. Like, I guess if we want to say, like, I've been like victim to or whatever, right? I don't really like using that word because it just limits me, and I've used it long enough. So I like other words. Like, I just enjoy other words. I don't need to be using that one. But things have happened, right? And the reality is, that's not the only, I guess, tell of the tale, right? Like, we all are people. We have a role in the things that happen to us in a lot of ways, in a lot of aspects of our life. And so the reality is, it took a long time for me to realize that it takes two to tango, even when at times it feels like my intentions are speaking more than literally me, or anything of that nature. The reality is, self-forgiveness is huge, because there are times where we step out of ourselves. There's times where we, as we're learning more about ourselves, that we want to try something new, right? And the reality is, people are people. They're individuals for a reason. That's one of the most beautiful things about life. So you don't know how certain things are going to land with people. You don't know how this tone works. You don't know if this tone works better with this person, right? It's a lot of trial and error. And so the reality is, error is a part of that. And you have to be able to, within yourself, release yourself of some of that weight of, I should have done this better, or, I'm better than this, or that, that's not my character, things of that nature. Definitely lock back in with yourself, and, go back into the world trying again.
And that's something you're going to have to do sometimes against other people. Like, other people will feel like you should never be forgiven for something. And you've got to be able to push past that and forgive yourself.
That's essentially one of the times where you need to, apply these skills. And I feel like, with me personally in my own life, this is something that I've really worked on a lot, and I'm already reaping the benefits, and I love it on this side. And then lastly, as far as, just it'll help your ability to move forward. As I said previously, the mind, body, and soul are all connected. So the reality is that as much or as close as you can to getting them, all in sync, the literal easier it will be to move forward. Now, the reality is, as I said, errors will come, life is life, hardships will come, but your approach to said hardships, your approach, your mindset to when these things come, will not shift you or paralyze you from moving forward. I think that's something for me that definitely has, kept me with some things in the same place for a long time of just there was some disconnect somewhere. Like I felt like I was saying the right things in my brain. I might have been doing the right things physically, but my soul wasn't there, or my soul was there, my mind was there, but the physical wasn't. It just all something about even one of those things being out of whack in comparison to the other definitely stunted me. And the reality is that ever since I started the journey of just keeping that, as in sync as possible and as sharp as possible, it's definitely hasn't wavered me from any of the things that have gone on, right? I'm dealing with grief. I'm dealing with, just being 22 and growing up and things of that nature, right? Identifying things for myself and standing on them, right? Especially the standing on them. That's hard to do when you're young, right? At any point, but especially when you're young. And so I think for me, knowing that I've done all of these things and that, I'm not paralyzed by any of the outside views or opinions or anything of that nature. It doesn't stop me from doing what I have to do. I think that's the most valuable thing that I've taken away from forgiveness and especially self, all of these things and how they identify with me personally.
Yeah, a lot of benefits. And if you're watching and you've had some benefits, you've tried it, again, put it in the chat. Yep, we got to get you going, moving 2024, moving toward reaping the benefits of forgiveness. Okay, so it's like, yeah, all right, well, how do we do that, right? Because easier said than done.
Absolutely.
This is one of those that truly is easier said than done, because also the thing about it is we carry this within us. And sometimes we know it, and sometimes it's buried so deep. We don't. We don't until the thought comes up, or the person comes around, or someone makes us feel badly about something.
Or the conflict arises.
That's right. Yeah. And the conflict arises, and it's not necessarily with the person that you don't forgive. It's just a very similar or the same kind of conflict, and the residue is there within you from this person, the conflict you have with this person that you have not forgiven. All right. So how do we do this? Well, we've got 6, double the amount this week, because this one is so extra hard. We got to give you more techniques to at least try. Let's go. The first one is to be honest with yourself. You've got to know what you are holding. Whether it is you're holding it against yourself or whether you're holding it against somebody else. I've had people who will say, "Oh no, no, I've moved on, I forget," and you know what? They haven't. They're not being honest in saying, "Hey, the feelings that are coming up for me when I think about this situation, when I think about the person, whatever it is, are these feelings, whether it's resentment or anger or guilt or embarrassment, whatever the feelings are." We've got to learn to name our feelings, at least to ourselves, because I'm not talking about you going to that person yet. I'm talking about you naming and being honest with yourself about what you're feeling. And if you're feeling it about you, then you need to say it out loud.
Yep. I second that. I believe everything starts with you, and wherever you're at with you shows up out in the world in some way, shape, or form. So I definitely second that.
Absolutely. Number 2, honor the pain. Look, it is hard to feel what you feel. It's painful. If something was done to you, it is incredibly painful to feel what was done, especially if it was unjust. Or you gotta honor that it's painful to do this work, right? If you're going to forgive, you gotta bring up the pain, and you've gotta honor that pain. If it's painful to think about because it was you who did it, right? You still gotta feel it, sit in it, honor that, hey, this is the reality of the situation for myself. I was this person then, right? Because oftentimes we have something to forgive ourselves for from when we were doing something very different than who we are now, when we were being that person. Maybe we were in a troubled situation. Maybe, as you said, sometimes when we're grieving, we act very differently and we may hurt people in that way. But you've got to honor that, yeah, this is painful work that I'm doing here, but I can sit in that pain. And you got to get it out. You've got to be able to express it somehow. And it isn't always verbal that you express it, right? It is that you can get it out, releasing it through activity or something that you know that you've specifically decided this thing right now is sitting on my heart and I need to do something to release it, something positive to release it, not take it out on someone. I didn't say take it out on someone. I said get it out. And that is really important. Maybe you're speaking to a recorder and get it out there. But you've got to get whatever is sitting within your heart about this unforgiveness, get it out there.
Absolutely. I think next was really important, and again, something you will hear me talk about probably every episode in some way, shape, or form. Keep searching yourself, right? At the end of the day, as I just said, you know, wherever you're at with you personally is going to be reflected in some way, shape, or form from the external world, right? I do believe that there is this sort of exchange between us as, you know, sources of energy in this universe with, you know, what we put out is what does get returned to us in some way, shape, or form, right? And so simply asking yourself the questions, posing them to yourself, right? You don't even need to be searching for that answer in that moment or searching so deliberately and so hard, right? These are things, again, that we are working on for life. I think this is especially probably something that should be top five, or I hope to be on, you know, top five on people's lists. It's just, you know, forgiveness, especially in the times you don't want to. I think, you know, we're all capable, but you know, when you don't want to is when, you know, anything is really a form of a, you know, a test to see where you're at. And so, you know, not being afraid to ask these questions of yourself, you know, just what's coming up for me, how's it showing up, you know, what do I like, what do I don't like, what do I align with, what do I don't, you know, as much as these are scary unknowns, and sometimes even the known is scary too, right, when you have an answer. But I think it's valuable regardless, in that, you know, it starts with you. Like everything starts with you, your goals and how that shapes out, your relationships and how that shapes out, especially with yourself. Um, it all is a push and pull.
I was going to say also to keep searching yourself. You can even decide that the top of every new year, you are going to go within and look for where you are holding unforgiveness. Because again, like I said, it isn't always apparent to us, but you could say, I want to search my heart. I know I did a really good exercise with myself is just visualizing, calling forward the faces of people who I knew I hadn't forgiven. Or one year I did who I thought I had forgiven. Oh Lord. And that was a revelation. That's what I said. This stuff is hard. I had not forgiven them folk. So
Yes,
I had to just continue, restart the work.
absolutely. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And what's coming up here for what we think is finding the opportunity to talk, right? So this is kind of similar to getting it out, but I believe here this is a little different for me personally in the way I'm hearing it, seeing it, receiving it is, um, you know, I think going back to self, right? Like you definitely want to, you know, talk to people that you're comfortable with, that you feel safe around, right? You definitely want to, in some of these situations, if you need to, you know, lay those foundations or boundaries ahead of time before you start sharing. I'm totally an advocate for that. You know, just on some, hey, really need a friend to talk to. I got to just get this out, right? I got to vent, or I do need some advice, right? Or I just need you to listen, whatever it is. I think that, you know, that's always helpful. But back to self, I think this is important simply because the mind can't tell the difference with a lot of things between like fact or fiction. So I believe that the way in which we talk to ourselves is honestly
Yes.
everything. Like the words we use, how we use them, and really what we do with them, right? Like how that works for us. Now, another thing easier said than done. I personally am working on this as I'm asking the world to work on this in the sense of, I've definitely, if I'm going to the gym or something, I gotta just kind of like, I need you to push, da da da. You gotta work harder. You gotta do this. You gotta do that. You're not doing enough of this. You're not doing enough of that. Right? That gets me in that mode. However, I've recognized that for the gym or for anything of that nature, right? Especially because I'm not a morning person and I'm getting up and I'm going at 9 a.m., something like that. That works for those things, right? And I had to talk to myself and find these opportunities for closing of gaps, for opening of new bridges, to know the difference of why that works here and why that may not work going into anything for work related things, right? Or for family related things. So I think that just finding these opportunities to correct yourself, finding these opportunities to, you know, make sure you feel comfortable with where these things are landing and these words are landing for you, before you put it out back into the universe is everything. Because I think that, as I said, the universe plays a part in all the things that we do and that we say, right? So you'd be surprised at the things that you're asking for without knowing you're really asking for those certain things just off of verbiage.
Yeah, and we're also really advocates for therapy. That therapy is
Oh yeah.
something that's really
Yeah.
important if you, especially if it's you that you have to forgive, right? Because sometimes you might have to talk to the person that you're wanting to forgive, or but if that person is you, then how do you talk to yourself? You can, but it's often that you could find some release in therapy, really helping yourself to forgive yourself through using therapy.
Yeah, I think for sure that's a huge thing. I'm in therapy. I love it. I personally am an advocate for it, and I definitely, for everyone, I'm an advocate for it. But certainly for men, young men, and things of that nature, we know the numbers around stuff like that, and I can tell you one of the things that causes those numbers to be so high is the way that we talk to ourselves. Just speaking from that perspective, we're losing a lot of young men and young boys just off of the disconnect that they don't know of the difference between fact or fiction, with their own mind, right? So really believing and taking on these things that they might be hearing, out there in the world, or that they're saying to themselves, that for sure is something that's eating at people. So everyone needs it, but I had to say that because I know personally how much those words have affected some of my closest friends.
Yeah, and I just realized something that you're gonna need to forgive me for, that that I actually repeated the this technique is number 5, but number 6, I repeated this number 6 rather. Number 6 actually
Should I even
is,
pull it up?
oh no, don't pull
All
it
right,
up
cool. I was gonna
because
say
it's
it's
the
not
same
even
way.
right. It's not even correct. I'm not pulling it up. Yeah.
Okay, so now you got the opportunity to hear me say, please forgive me.
Absolutely, and you are forgiven. I ain't forgetting, but you are forgiven.
So the 6 would be admitted to yourself.
Absolutely.
Admit to yourself that you have not forgiven. Mm-hmm. Admit it. Sometimes we think, oh, I've moved on. Right? I have forgiven. I just don't have anything to say to that person anymore. And maybe that's how you've resolved to be able to live with it, right? Because you are the one who has to decide what's going to be best in your life. But the fact that you have moved on, or even told yourself that you've moved on, doesn't mean that you've forgiven the person. So if you really and truly have thought that you had forgiven them, you really do have to admit to yourself when it comes up for you, oh my goodness, I have not. I know I did. I know I called one of my cousins who I'm really close to, and I said, girl, I just realized something. This memory came up and I have not forgiven her. And she started laughing. She said, no, you have not. I was like, be honest with yourself. Because again, we're saying, right, this is about when you do not, how to forgive when you do not want to, but some part of you has to want to.
Yeah.
Some part of you has to want to. And otherwise, you're not looking at how to forgive. You're not tuning into this show on how to forgive when you don't want to, if there isn't a part of you that wants to, or at least want to explore the possibility of how you could do that. So you've got to admit, hey, I'm holding this. And right now, you could admit it, even if you admit it as a badge of honor right now, at least you're honest with yourself that you have not forgiven this person and you are holding that. Don't lie to yourself.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you had anything more to say about that.
I'm with that. Absolutely. That's perfect.
All right. So I want to actually use a little bit of our time, because we got a little time. I want to use a little bit of our time to give you a little guidance around the technique that I use to call up, right, people or situations and to check in to see if I had actually forgiven. And I don't want you, the reason why I want to do that is because it can be overwhelming. And I want to make sure that you really do understand how to do it. Because I would say that you do not want to dwell anywhere where there is a tremendous amount of emotion for you. So you may just want to start off with, I don't know how many people are holding. Forget, I didn't have a lot. I didn't have a long list. Some people have a long list. So if you have a long list, start with 3, right? If you have a short list, start with 3. And maybe you don't have 3, so then you're good. You'll call up whoever, but you really want to sit with yourself, sit in silence, right? Find a place where you can be really quiet. And you want to just see if you can bring up the face of the person. You don't always have to bring up the situation. Plus, there may be a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to bring them a lot of those up because it will be disturbing for you. Just bring up the face and then sit and feel, what are the emotions that are coming up for you, and honor them, right? Going back to that technique, honor that, hey, this is what I'm feeling around this. If the situation that you are holding unforgiveness for comes up, then, or you were holding on forgiveness, you thought you were holding on to, right? If that comes up, then that tells you that you absolutely are holding unforgiveness, because the feelings around it will let you know, yeah, I'm still feeling bad about this. I'm still angry about this. I still do not like what has happened here. If you are holding forgiveness, if you have truly forgiven, then there's much more light. There's light around what it is that you are thinking about. Even if the situation comes up, you feel light. You may even smile, like, I'm through that. I'm over that. I have given that to God or whoever. I've given that up, and I feel good about that. And then move on and pull up the next face. And then the next, like I said, don't do more than 3. If you got a long list, it's going to take some time anyway. But really just look and see, am I still holding it for this person? And then go back to yourself, right? And again, not more than 3. Are there situations that you are still not forgiving yourself for, even though you thought you had moved on, moved past it, right? Again, first, honoring any emotions that come up around it. The day that you can laugh about this stuff, again, that is when you really do know that you have forgiven yourself or others. If you can laugh and go, oh my goodness, I was so silly back then, or I just did not have it together back then. what can I say? Right? When you can be in that place rather than still heartbroken about having done that or said that or been like that, then you know, yes, in fact, you have achieved forgiveness. And if that's not where you are, where you're not at the forgiveness place, then you're going to need to pick one of those people and start all over again. And I would suggest you pick yourself if you're on that list, because when you can forgive you, I think that's the harder piece. And I don't know if how you feel about what I'm saying, but I think when you can forgive yourself, you can find ways to forgive other people.
Yeah, I think it's just, I second everything, but I think as far as my final words, I would just say, again, we're stepping into a new year. Uh, a lot went on and transpired in 2023 for everyone. And, there's a lot going on right now, on an extreme scale, on a day by day scale. And the reality is, I've had many beautiful mentors of mine who had told me, small is all. So the reality is, start small here. I don't want you to go big, experience that error through that trial and error process, and then burn out, right? Burnout will come out or be a test of, right, to see where you're really at. But you're stronger than you have a bigger capacity than and I think that that's the way we want to move, into this new year. Small is all. The reality is that, if we do this every chance we get, we do it intentionally, right? We ask ourselves these questions, right? We really take advantage of these opportunities that life will throw you to do something different. Then we as a society can see something different from what we've known for a long time.
Yeah, and we need real forgiveness in this society, and we don't have the models for it. So, as I said at the top of the hour, let's be the models. Let's learn in 2024. Let's be the models for real forgiveness, but forgiveness for genuine ask, right? And I know we don't have a whole lot of time
No,
left,
we don't.
I didn't drop that.
And yes, you
but
did. It was not on the script.
Yeah. Forgiveness for a genuine ask. So I'm going to say this as an African American: we are always asked to forgive when there's some kind of racial incident. Do you forgive? Do you forgive? That to me is not a genuine ask. That's rooted in racism. That's a whole nother topic, which we will do on this show because that is conflict. But so that's an example for me of what is not a genuine ask. A genuine ask is that you truly, the person asking for forgiveness, it truly means that, needs it, wants it, because they recognize that, right, they have done something wrong. Or a genuine ask, maybe a higher power is asking you to forgive that person because they know that for you need to do it, right? What's that saying? Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die or get sick or whatever, right? And because it really does more harm to you than it does to the other person. So imagine if your unforgiveness is toward yourself. You've got double the harm there, right? Because you're the person who needs to be forgiven, and you're the person who did whatever it is that you need to be forgiven for. So I know I dropped that at the end, but listen, stick with us. You'll learn more about this because so many topics are tied into each other. But
absolutely.
For now, my final word is.
That wasn't your final word?
No, my final word is, it's the beginning of the year. Give it a try. Try to think of somebody that you need to forgive and do work to that. And these techniques can be helpful to you. Great. And remember the benefits that Justin said, but give it a try.
Yeah, I said my final words. So my actual final words.
All right. So what we want you to do, though, we want to make sure that the show progresses, that we keep building our audience. We want you to stay tuned in and excited about what we do. So we ask you to follow us, to subscribe, to like us, right? We've got a Facebook, Working It Out TV show on Facebook. So like and follow. And we've got our YouTube channel, Working It Out Across Generations. Subscribe, but really get the word out there. Stay with us because we have so much that we want you to learn alongside of us, right? Because
Yes.
we are doing it in real time, in real life every day. And we're just thankful that you're here, that you tuned in live or on the replay. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes.